Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Mastering Dungeons within the top 20 of your favorite RPG podcasts, I hope. I am Shawn Merwin here, as I am always here with Teos Abadia. Teos is holding the
It's a
jelly,
gelatinous cube I got
cube.
quite some time ago, but I don't know. When you were saying dungeons, I just felt like it was like the kind of thing that should be in a dungeon. But it's pretty cute. I keep it on my desk.
Yeah. The skull inside, it's a little creepy, but
Yeah,
hey,
it's one of those. Is it a Funko Pop thing? What is
it
this?
looks
Let's
like a
see.
Funko Pop in a
I think it
gelatinous
is.
cube.
It's really hard to. Yeah, yeah. It is. It is a Funko Pop with a skeleton in it, and yeah. Uh, Shawn, my
Mhm.
youngest child, has now graduated high school.
Congratulations to he and to you.
And all the parents out there that may be in similar situations,
Yeah.
you made it somehow. We made it somehow. It's been amazing. I'm feel very fortunate. He's going off to a good school. He's really excited. He has good friends. He's mostly not tainted by my madness.
A little
Uh,
madness. What's a little
yeah, I
madness
mean a
between
smidge.
friends? Yeah. But what we have to do now is talk about role-playing games. And we're going to do that by starting in our listener corner, where people can send in their comments and questions via all the avenues that we will talk about at the end of the show. We are going to start with an email from Axel Cholewa, who says the following. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the hope and fear mechanic from Daggerheart means that there is a 50% chance to roll with fear. So if I want to use a Daggerhearty initiative system in 5e, I could say the following. It's the player's turn until someone fails a roll or succeeds with a naturally rolled odd number. So my question is, what kind of problem would you see in a 5e game using an initiative system such as that? And okay, you opened this big can of worms, Axel. I apologize for what you're about to go through, but uh, you we appreciate the
You woke
thought.
the game designer.
Yeah, I am going to be full of rage today, just so
Oh,
everyone knows it's just going to be one of those days. So I apologize ahead of time. So let's get right to the first thing, which is let's get the numbers right. Uh, as the rules are currently written, there is a 54% chance. It's slightly higher than 54%, like
what?
54.16%
How
chance
can that be,
to roll
Shawn?
with
Wait a
hope
minute.
in a Daggerheart game. Yes, because critical hits count as hope. So it's not 50-50. Critical hits are a definite percentage of the rolls that you could have. Exactly, 4.16% chance of those rolls. So you have to count those. Is it a huge thing? No, but yes, right? All of those things count. In fact, it's why they switched back to rolling the d6 if you are being assisted rather than rolling with an extra hope die, because that number, that percentage of rolling with hope or rolling critical hits got too high. I would assume that's why they did, because we noted that on the show.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want me to dive into this, Teos, or do you want to partake?
No, go for it, and then I'll add after my thoughts.
Okay. So there are several problems with using uh, Axel's suggestion as a initiative system for a 5e game. Let's start with the most obvious. If you do that, there is a non-0% chance that the DM will never get a chance to act during a particular combat. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, if you take this, I didn't do the exact math on this, but if you extrapolate out over millions of encounters played of a 5e game, there would be enough times where the DM never got a chance to act that the system would just not work. Now, I'm not saying it happens all the time. I'm not even saying it would happen frequently, but it would happen to the point where the game master would feel like they they're not enjoying the game. You never fail to roll, and you just never happen to roll with an odd number. All right. So that's just the tip of this iceberg. You good with me so far here, Teos?
I'm with you.
All right. So that's one reason why not to do that. Another reason is, let's look at the terminology. It's a player's turn until someone fails a roll or succeeds with a natural odd number. Okay. What is considered a failed roll is the next question. I'm going to DM, and I sit down, and all my party are spellcasters. Oh, that's odd, but it happens. I've played in games with all barbarians, so maybe everyone wants to play a spellcaster this time. Okay, cool. We start playing the game. I can only act as the game master when they fail a roll, or if they roll an odd number on a check. And the first person steps up and casts Sacred Flame. Okay, I roll my saving throw. Fail, succeed, does it matter? I don't know. Next person gets up and casts another spell, and I make my save. They all cast spells that make me save, and they don't attack. Do I ever get to act? All right. You might say, well, then just change the rule. So if you fail the saving throw or roll an odd saving throw, then it's your turn. Okay, well, what if they all cast area of effect spells where I'm rolling multiple saving throws? Is it if anyone fails or rolls an odd number? Is it if more than half? How does this work? So already we are seeing ways in which this doesn't work.
Yeah, and how you open it up for abuse. Yeah. I think that, one thing that's interesting is, I think when we first started talking about Daggerheart, and I think it was because of how it was written up in the very first playtest version, the DM really acts when you fail or you roll with fear. And so that then ended up creating those situations we had in various games. You had a game where you guys essentially always succeeded, and I had a game where our folks always were failing or generating fear. And then that resulted in this very choppy, the DMs going tons of times kind of situation, none of which was ideal. And looking at the wording in the current packet, it is clear that what they now want you to do is use this as opportunity. And the DM is being really asked and tasked with the job of deciding when they should go. And so they can at any time decide to take a move, depending on the type of scene. And in combat scenes, they can spend fear or action tracker points or whatever to go whenever they want, not just when the characters have rolled with fear or failed to roll. That just gives them an extra opportunity to do so. And in fact, even when they may go, they may choose not to because they think it's not good for the game. And so you're putting a lot of, that's very different than what's being described here, right? And I think if we go off of the first version, it sounds good. Even Daggerheart has said, wait a minute, this needs to have the DM has to adjudicate here, because otherwise it's no fun.
And so what we're really talking about here is how a game's mechanics, how a game system interacts with turns and with the narrative that flows from it. In a Powered by the Apocalypse style game, the game master has the flexibility to step in at any point.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain times where they are entrusted with that ability. But at any point, you can say, okay, you just did your thing. Now it makes sense in the story for me to do this. You don't need to spend points. You don't need to wait for rolls. You just do it.
Yeah.
In a system like 5e, the system itself is supposed to make the characters' lives interesting. That's what the game master in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is mandated to do. Make the characters' lives interesting. The interest could be putting risk in their way. It could be giving them a benefit, but it's something interesting. And what D&D, what a 5e system does, is relies on the system itself to make the characters' lives interesting. That's why when we create rules, when we create spells or classes or conditions, when they get out of balance, the game master becomes incapable of making the characters' lives more interesting because either they cannot act, or they get to act too much, or they get too much damage, or they do too little damage, or they, whatever. And so that's why the system itself for 5e needs to be very carefully vetted for those imbalancing issues.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, this question is a great question, because this is kind of what happens to our DM brains all the time. So we see something, it sounds neat, we want to play with it. And what I would suggest in all of these cases is absolutely try stuff like this. Do so in a very specific encounter that you can say, there's a reason why it feels this way. Sort of the way that they'll say, like, oh, Spelljammer, I think, says, consider using side initiative. Well, side initiative may or may not please you, but it can make some sense when you're sort of wrapping things into an entity, like you're on this ship, you're on that ship. That can work. And other types of initiative can do that too. So try to find a situation where you can test it out that isn't a complete change to your entire game. Lets you feed off of that, learn the situation, and then you can, if you want, back off a bit and go, okay, let's tweak this further or not use it. That was just a special thing that we used in this encounter.
Yeah, the flexibility of a Powered by the Apocalypse kind of game is great for game masters, because you do get to tailor things and you're not locked into a rigid system. You just need to understand that making the changes will have huge ramifications. You could look like the smallest tweak, but it's huge. And where Daggerheart is trying to position itself is to have all the benefits of a Powered by the Apocalypse kind of game,
right,
while also pulling elements from other games to make the cognitive and decision-making load on the game master less than it is in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, which is hard. And you're treading on dangerous ground when you try to design like that.
Yeah.
It's working to a point, but it is also needs to be play tested a lot.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that today when we review the advice they provide on how to run a game and create campaigns and so on. It's very interesting how they're trying to do it. Yeah.
Sure. So thank you for the question. I hope that was gentle enough to answer the question without being overly harsh. Next, we get via Patreon, Steve Cornett and Clay Kingsley asking this: what is the best marketing approach to introducing a new world setting via Kickstarter? Would a complete series of campaign modules or one-shots be more marketable as opposed to a campaign source book, monster guide, and player's guide? We are Steve Cornett and Clay Kingsley, launching a Kickstarter for Core, the World of Many Portals, in 2025. First of all, thank you for the question. Second of all, good luck with the Kickstarter. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that. So the question, what's the best marketing approach to introducing a new world setting via Kickstarter? My answer is, if you figure that out, let me know. Because to be honest, what I've seen recently is a video killed the radio star situation, where the best marketing approach is to be an established role-playing game company with lots of people already engaged with your content. See Hit Point Press. Be an established role-playing game personality with lots of people engaged with your content. See MCDM. Or be an established actual play with lots of people already engaged with your content. See Legends of Evantris with Crooked Moon, and see Critical Role. So
we should be successful in order to be successful, is what you're saying? Thanks, Shawn.
Recently, yes. You haven't seen a great deal of, I don't want to say success, because success is a tough word, but you haven't seen a great deal of surprising success with people for just putting up an idea. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a great idea, even if there's great supporting material. Oh, look, here, all our rules are here. Look at the art we've done. This is what we're going to offer. it's not able to break through that fame barrier. That seems to be where we're at.
And I think part of it is there, we've seen this statistically, there are more Kickstarters than ever before. And so there is a lot more competition for people's wallets, for people's interest. And for one thing to sort of coalesce to draw everybody together is a lot harder unless you're spending a ton on marketing or whatever. But I do want to do justice to this question. I don't know that therefore the answer is it doesn't matter at all. It's about the marketing, though that is not a terrible answer or completely wrong. But in this question of whether it's better to have campaign modules or one shots as your marketing, I would say that really depends on the overall offer, right? That choice should absolutely reflect the overall content that you're providing, right? If this is something that's meant to be a big epic story, that's the type of world that core is, then great. That makes more sense. If core is a place that you play in periodically with short experiences and explore, disparate parts of the world and in each of these adventures, and so it makes more sense as one shot, that's great. Or if it's introductory in nature, right? For you want new players, then one shots would be great to bring in new groups all the time. So that's, I guess, how I'd look at it is what makes sense for what creates the most cohesive story that you're going to say to the audience, right? This is our world, and here's what we're launching and the kinds of experiences you're going to have because that matches the overall premise.
I would say everything that Teos said, plus who is your audience?
Yeah.
If you take an established world and remove it from its parent company, if you were trying to sell the Forgotten Realms, what would you as a consumer want to be provided as a tease for that? Is it going to be the adventure? And now the audience that you're going to get, if you do that, is going to be DMs who want specific pre-made adventures to run. Then you're going to capture them. If you want players to get involved, then you're going to want to have an element of player content in there. But by doing that, you are going up against every other company that does player content. Plus, you're also then dealing with game masters who might not want their players to be the one driving forward this notion of what the campaign will be based on the player content. So there is no right or wrong answer, even the fame element removed. You just have to decide where the strength of your offering is and then highlight that. Last question comes to us from Shu Kin Tan via Patreon Discord. While I do write notes and structure my thoughts on a project, I don't necessarily document everything. Sometimes I lose track and forget the discrete steps I performed to solve a problem or some pivotal moment of discovery that slowly fades into a blur of minutia. Every project is different, but I wonder if there's a structured framework for post-project reflection other than a list of questions along the likes of, say, 1, what did I like or what did I dislike? 2, what worked well and what didn't? 3, what have I learned or what skills did I develop from this project? 4, how was my working relationship with the stakeholders in the project? 5, where and how can I improve? 6, how did I deliver value or quality to this project? 7, will I do things differently after this and how? All great questions. Teos, why don't you take the first stab at this?
Sure. I don't operate with a set of questions like this, and I don't know if there is a good framework. Like there probably is something in sort of project management areas that would look at sort of how to make a project, what's your project wrap up and what would you take forward. I can't say that I know of any or have had great experiences despite being on countless projects. I don't know that I've seen a lot of it. But what I will often do is say, okay, this project is ending. And what's really easy to do is just completely forget the project and suddenly you're on to the next one. And then what I've found happening back when I used to do this is that I'm on the next project and we're like, oh, here I am again going through this particular issue. And I really could have, at the beginning of this project, addressed it if I'd remembered what I learned from the very last project. And so that's been the impetus for me to just generally pause and reflect at the end of a project. And I don't do it super formally with like a checklist or anything like that, but I just kind of really think to myself, what should I learn from this project? What do I need to carry forward? Things I do differently, or things to ask at the beginning of a project, or, any of that, right? And so there are these just checklists. Like you might say to yourself, okay, I should, you see something, and it doesn't just have to be at the project, but you might see somebody talking about it and saying, I really do need to, at the beginning of a project, have in my checklist that I say, will any of my work be used with AI? Right? If that's the thing that bothers you, then that needs to go on your checklist. And so I do that kind of thing where I just pause and say, what do I need to carry forward? I also keep pretty good notes during a project, so I can generally just quickly scan my one project file that has all of my information and drafts and things like that. And from there, I can pull out my lessons pretty easily. What do you think, Shawn?
Totally. If you have been a project manager outside of role-playing games, then this is a checklist that you would go through generally for a project postmortem. At more formalized institutions will, require that of a project. At the end, the project manager will have to write up a report to say, what did we learn, what went right, what went wrong, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these questions are great. I would take the next step forward and ask the most important question that goes along this whole spectrum, which is why? Why did I like working on it? Why didn't I?
Gotcha.
That's even more important than did it happen?
Mm-hmm.
Was my relationship good? Yes. Why? No. Why? Because that's the kind of thing that help you carry forward into a new project.
Yeah.
Right now, I am working on different projects, and I'm in different positions within each. On some, I'm basically the lead. On some, I'm middle management, right? I'm not the lead, but I'm overseeing something. And then some, I'm just a freelancer, just doing what I'm told and handing in the work. And it's funny, after you work on enough projects, you can sort of see where the problems are going to be. And sometimes you can't do anything about it, even if you are the lead, because we don't have enough funding to fix this,
or time, or
we don't have the time, or whatever. But sometimes you are just a freelancer and you ask, hey, is there a template that you want me to work on? And if you're told no, you generally know that there's a problem. Now, maybe not for you, but down the road, someone is going to have to put everything into a template or figure something out.
The layout person would love for there to be a template.
Yes. These things are things you learn. And so even if you don't do a specific list like this, it's generally a good idea to at least put your finger on the three biggest things. And then maybe they're positive, right? I loved working with this freelancer. They were on time. Their work was exquisite. And I want to make sure I work with them again. That could be a very good one takeaway.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add to it, one thing you made me realize is, like, I already have a pretty big checklist that I work off of for new projects. But if you don't have that yet, then one of the things to do is it's not just about looking at your previous project and what to bring forward, but you want to have that checklist in place so that you know all the things to do. And I covered this in my recent 2-part series in Success in RPGs. Like, when am I getting paid? When am I invoicing even, right? But both of those questions are important, because then you don't know, like, am I doing everything and then there's feedback and then maybe I tell you to pay me? Or do I do it by phases? Are there phases? Like, those kinds of structured questions are really super helpful. And a lot of times, especially with working with smaller companies, they haven't even thought about it. And so they'll, well, you know what? How about we do it this way? And even major companies can often need the reminder of, so when do you want us to invoice? Yeah, I guess it makes sense to, and then they can have that's where you can be like, well, it's all got to be done before December. And you're like, oh, well, that's good to know, because we got to use up the budget this year or whatever. And so having all those kinds of questions, and it's not just money, but like, who are the other team members? And like you said, templates, right? If I use 19 subheadings, is that going to be a problem?
Mhm.
If I like to bold every other word, is that a problem? Like those are really important things to what are your suggestions, your what do you call it? The style guide, right? Things like that.
Right.
Who is my lead, right? Who am I reporting to? Just some of those things. And the more you get through that, you have that list established. Then what that means also is as you do another project, you will probably add to that list, right? Or you'll look at your list and go, oh yeah, I need to also ask, and I'm going to change my list up to have this second question I asked.
So you may not actually need to go through all 10 questions for every project, but as Teos said, if you come up with those things, then those important things, top three, you can keep adding to that list as you go from project to project to project.
Yep, absolutely. Good question.
And with that, we will get into our news and commentary section, starting with the reveal of the 2024 DMG cover. Tell us who scooped this news, Teos. Was it the latest gaming magazine? Was it the intrepid reporters who are focused on games specifically?
Oh yeah, it was the UK Mirror newspaper of all places, Shawn.
Of course.
I mean, in some ways, great, right? Because I feel like sometimes this news, it ends up being the same sort of like whatever the current version of Gamist magazine is, video gamey kind of pop culture type thing. And we really do need to extend that this should be with Stranger Things, with all these different tie-ins, with there should be the ability to get to bigger places, and I'd say bigger than the UK Mirror too. But oh well. But yes, images of the DMG were given to the UK Mirror newspaper with an impressive cover showing villains from the D&D 80s cartoon, Venger in the background, Skyla and Warduke in the foreground. And these are folks who, Venger was pretty prominent in the D&D cartoon. The others saw some minor appearances, and there was some an adventure in Basic that had Warduke in it, and there were action figures. But, it just, I think, somewhat speaks to D&D. Like, of course, this is an attempt to be retrospective.
Mm-hmm.
So great, we're trying to look back at the history, and sort of this is all we have, right? And probably because they didn't, it's a DMG side, so you can't put Drizzt in it. And it's like, well, yeah, what do you do? What do you do that 5e didn't do, right? 5e went with King Snore, which most people probably don't know who that is either. And so, it's fine. And then the back cover showed an underground mind flayer temple, illithid statues, glowing fungi, zigzagging staircase, which I thought was actually reminiscent of a 4e art that's a very gorgeous piece by William O'Connor, where he puts adventurers on this sort of zigzagging staircase holding a torch. And so I reached out to the cover artist for this new piece, and Tyler Jacobson said that indeed it was playing off of that magnificent piece of art by William O'Connor, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah. So the UK Mirror interviewed Josh Herman, who is head of art for D&D at Wizards. And Josh said that the front cover is supposed to sort of illustrate the toolkit that game masters will be able to play with as they create villains and create stories, using this 5th edition refresh rules.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in fact, there's even like behind all of it, this enormous Draculage and everything. I found it a little busy, but it's fine. I mean, if I get the 5th edition 2014 covers, they aren't necessarily my favorite, but they're great, right? They're great art. It's fine. It all works. I sort of feel the same way this way. And they in that interview, they said that each of the covers, Player's Handbook, DMG, and MM, is supposed to be very clear that if you look at the cover without even the titles, you would know which is which, right? So this is very DMG with all the villain focus, and it looks like an enormous encounter playing out, right? Skeletons, and then it gets harder as you go back. So that's a neat idea. They also said that the inspiration was the 1979 reissue AD&D cover with the DM in the green cloak who's opening the doors, right? And you can't quite see what the dangers are inside. And so they said here they aim to show after the DM steps aside and has opened the doors, this is what you would see beyond. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them. We also got a look at the exclusive alternate covers, where there is a depiction of Lolth, where weaving a hapless person into her web. This cover celebrates the machinations and pulling strings that game masters and DMs get to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was a more typical Games Radar, right? Like, oh yeah, Games Radar.
Yep.
Not the
There
New
we
York
go.
Times,
That's it.
Games Radar.
Yeah, close enough. We'll take whatever we can get at this point. Speaking of taking whatever we can get, we are not going to get anytime soon the D&D TV show, because Deadline is reporting that Paramount Plus has decided not to proceed with the live action D&D TV series. In 2023, January, Paramount gave the project an 8-episode straight to series order, making us hopeful that we would see it.
Yeah, I mean, they put down money.
Hasbro's-
What happened?
Yeah, yep. And Hasbro's in-house division, Hasbro Entertainment, is now going to shop the series after undergoing a, quote, creative update. What does that mean? It means a new creative team will probably be brought in to replace the team of Rawson Marshall Thurber and Drew Cavella. Hasbro, though, says that they are committed to the project. And have we heard anything else about this, Teos?
So not specific to that. I think this now goes into that, murky backroom area where somebody's going to be brought in to, I guess, rewrite things and create new pilots that are going to be deemed to be more, I don't know, exciting, sellable, whatever, so that somebody else will be talked into carrying this series and paying for it the way that Paramount had. But, it's not necessarily, I mean, a good question is this because what exists there is not great? Maybe, maybe not. In follow-up news, Paramount has agreed to merge with Skydance, perhaps preventing its demise because the kind of other offer on the table was maybe one that would have resulted in Paramount sort of being, shredded and becoming fodder for other things. Paramount being a storied, long-standing entertainment company. And that's how it is for multi-billion-dollar entertainment properties, right? There are a lot larger questions than whether Paramount will carry a D&D show, because it's got to worry about whether it's even going to exist even as a name.
Exist. Yeah, for sure. All right. So the next story I don't know anything about. I closed my eyes, put my fingers in my ears, and went la 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 while all this was happening. So Teos, take it away. What is the latest controversy?
This is a story about Wizards of the Coast posting a job position for an AI position. And rather than research this story carefully, I asked Google, and this story is about ham. No, I didn't Google it. I actually researched it. I did the work. So the reason this is interesting, that people are reacting. I mean, people will react for a lot of reasons, right? Some people hate D&D, and anything that happens will be used against them in the court of public opinion. Some people are fans and are generally just really like wondering what's happening. And if we speak to that part of it, what's strange about posting a job that seeks a principal AI engineer late last week is this contradicts earlier statements by the company saying, we're not going to use AI in Magic the Gathering and D&D. And it seemed like that was more than just, AI generated art. It really was using AI. The position names both properties, Magic the Gathering and D&D, in the listing. It's hard to figure out exactly what it does. But if you look at the job, it says things like, we are building a central technology team, right? Central, not isolated, not focused, to create high-value software and processes in direct support of our development teams. Maybe that's video game development teams, but it's still sort of like it's like a back-end toolkit thing. You'll be the most senior engineer within the team and partner with the technical director to ensure all of the products at Wizards of the Coast are supported by our engineering efforts. You will lead this new team to explore uses of AI in game development, asset creation, and automated frameworks. Asset creation, okay. Work closely with internal and external teams to define and drive the strategic roadmap for AI integration in our tools, pipelines, and game products. Be an advocate with vision in AI, working closely with other teams to build roadmaps and timelines for usage across our products. Explore new uses of AI for all levels of game development. Design, build, and deploy systems for intelligent generation of text dialogue, audio, art assets, NPC behaviors, and real-time bot frameworks. design and develop libraries for teams to easily consume and deploy AI tools and enhancements. Understanding the ethical ramifications. So this is part of the requirements, is that I hope you'll bring this last bit. Understanding the ethical ramifications of using AI in our work and being able to speak to how to ensure ethics are embedded in what we do. And so Christian Hoffer at comicbook.com reached out to Wizards to ask about the conflict, which is bizarre. That's like a thing a journalist would do, Shawn. And when he checked with his sources, Wizards told comicbook.com that the job description was related to future video game projects, which is a growing part of the Hasbro subsidiary. And, quote, our stance on AI hasn't changed. Quote, this job description is for a role for future video game projects. You can reference our AI FAQ here, which we'll link again in our show notes and we've shared before. But this, it's sort of like there's this duality at Wizards, right? The stance of no AI. And then there are things like this position. And there is the CEO of Hasbro, Chris Cox. We covered how recently he spoke about wanting to explore AI in Magic the Gathering and D&D, including specifically, how can we get rid of the laborious work that DMs have to do? And oh my God, having to create all these adventures. We could just take that all and chuck it into the AI pool, and out would come, amazing adventures. So I do think that there is a lot here. We've linked to the job listing and to the comicbook.com story. In the end, you can't kind of have both, right? You can't be, we are completely against AI and we're looking for it to power all our back end and all our development tools. And the question is, what are we talking about, right? Are we talking about like a video game, and the video game maybe generates what the NPCs say based on AI? Maybe, but if I look at the really successful games where people say, I buy this game because that NPC dialogue is so great, it's where people worked really hard to do that, right? Like the game Hades, that you hear about how all of these trees and options of things NPCs tell you make it shine. It's hard work that made that work, right? It's not because it's just smart tech. If we look at something like the virtual tabletop, right? What would we want this AI to do? And it gets perilous really fast, right? And I think it feels like CEO buzz speak rather than real need that's driving this, right? It feels like it's trying to attract investors rather than actually solving a problem. But time will tell, Shawn.
Yeah. Okay. AI aside, I've had this trouble with Wizards of the Coast job descriptions for years. I would be reading through the list and it would say narrative designer or world building storyteller, right? And you'd click it and you would have to read the entire thing, and then you would still not know. Is this for Magic? Is this for D&D? Is this for a video game component that sometimes we don't even know? Yeah. You have to sort of go to the successful candidates will have, and then it's like 12 years experience delivering AAA games. I'm like, oh, okay, well, obviously this is video games.
Well, and you and I know Wizards, and one of the things that often happens is that the number of committees that have to come together to agree on something can be quite large for some things. And when that happens, you end up with this AI position maybe does 20 things when it should really do 2. And so you might have a person who's genuinely answering the question saying, no, it's this little area, but maybe to get approved, it needed all of this rigmarole from various different groups at Wizards of what they might want out of it. And the answer is you end up not knowing what this position will do, even as even the company itself may not quite know what this position is supposed to do. The hired person may not know. And that creates a lot of ambiguity as to what may play out down the road if you have that kind of approach.
Yep. Well, we'll go from the ridiculous to the sublime, which is the Tales from the Infinite Staircase is now being marketed, and we are getting interviews about that product. The D&D team is releasing video interviews and promos for this Tales from the Infinite Staircase. We've got Chris Perkins talking about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. You have Justice Armand discussing the fun gear, like the laser pistol. It says it's Stephen Colbert's favorite adventure, and that the power armor can cause mistakes in the same way that Stephen fondly recalls. So Anything that you took away from interviews that you've seen?
I mean, it's fun, right? It's always clear that we may not always love everything about the final product, but boy, you can see the love that Perkins and Justice Armand have for all this. I mean, Justice is just glowing and smiling as he talks about all these fun things he's doing. We see amazing art. We get Mind Flare wearing space gear, the ruined spaceship interior, classic laser pistols and rifles and gear, the workout trainer androids, and more. And it was interesting because I was looking at that art and I was thinking, yeah, this adventure has so many really neat things. And I was thinking, are they going to do anything about the fact that you have these sweet spots and all of these layers you have to explore to get to them? And in fact, they said, Justice says, the original has all of these floors. The updated version introduces a new central antagonist, a narrative structure, and they've condensed the adventure to fewer layers and removed some empty rooms. The goal is to make sure you can get to the fun parts without it feeling like a chore. I think that's really good. I know that folks who really love just sort of open play and exploration may see that as a bit of a shame. And I think it is if that new narrative structure is weak, right? Which it has sometimes been in Wizards offerings. If it's strong enough, then that combination could be fantastic, right? Because Barrier Peaks had this, it was fun to explore this and look for tech and look for surprises, but you could spend an entire session and not find anything, and that's too much, right? And so hopefully they found a sweet spot to balance those things together. And all of this is, this is one of the adventures of Infinite Staircase, which apparently is all going to be through a sort of genie-like creature who can open doors for you to provide you these adventures, right? Sort of the way like that Yawning Portal was the idea that you could go to all these areas through the help of an NPC.
Yeah. Do you like D&D Teos?
I do.
Do you like
Thanks.
Destiny 2?
I have seen it played. It looks very impressive when I watch it played.
I don't play a lot of video games, but I did play Destiny 2. It was very, very fun. It was very entertaining. And since I love both, now I can play both at the same time because there has been a trailer released showing D&D characters looking like mind players. We have swords and spells. We have people leaping over spiked pits and rolling a large glowing D20 in a Destiny 2 expansion. So you can experience a legendary crossover with Dungeons & Dragons, featuring Faerun-inspired armor ornaments for every class, an owlbear chariot, the Queen of Dragons ship, an Eye Tyrant ghost shell, and more. It is coming to you tomorrow as we record this. So by the time this show drops, you should be able to pre-order and get a Beholder Ghost Shell robot vinyl figure. And all of that is up on YouTube with a link in our show notes.
Mm-hmm.
If you like PAXs, PAX West is now selling their badges. You can pick them up to visit the convention, which runs August 30th to September 2nd in Seattle, Washington. Teos, you're going to be there.
I am. I should be there helping coordinate D&D for Bald Man Games again. So that'll be really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how the crop of players compares to previous conventions that I've run in Seattle, and see if we still have the droves of new fans, and does it change because of 2024 coming out? I'll be curious. My guess is that it'll be a little lag behind, so it probably won't kind of reflect anything yet, but it'll be interesting to see if that changes. And I have to say, so PAX West, I'm always excited for PAX West. It's one of my favorite cons. But also, if you're a fan of AC Inc., I threw into the show notes this fan-made video that takes a previous game, which I think might have been a PAX East game. I forget where it was, but it was the game where Viari ends up with half a hit point. And this artist and fan took that segment of the game, takes the audio from it, and then adds visuals to it, and it is just superb work. I mean, if you at all like the AC Inc. stuff, you've got to watch this video. It had me just rolling because it perfectly draws together how absurd it is, how this all ends up taking place with a shrunken Viari taking damage from trying to heal himself with a potion, ending up with half a hit point, and Perkins being the DM that enables all of this ridiculousness. It's just great.
Cool. Speaking of cool, Foundry, the virtual tabletop, is launching its very own digital role-playing game called Ember. They will be kickstarting this. This is a digital-only role-playing game, available, of course, via the Foundry VTT, using and showcasing the best technology from that platform. You can go to foundryvtt.com to see this, and there's also a Kickstarter preview page where you can see screenshots showing how to do hex exploration as well as dungeon diving. There's been no date set for the Kickstarter, but you can follow the campaign. Teos, you noted that this is not a first in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, Roll20 created, they hired James and Jaquays to build Burn Bright and launched that several years ago. And I think they used it effectively at the time as a way to showcase their platform. Like they really showed off how an RPG can be embedded in Roll20, and I think it led to things like thinking through what an adventure can be like to showcase how to run it and so on, that has had lasting implications for the platform, lasting benefits. But I don't know that it had particularly great reach, right? People aren't playing Burn Bright every day, unfortunately, despite this system being a good system. So I'm curious whether this will have a different fate. Now they are kickstarting it, so maybe there'll be more buy-in by people who back it. But it'll be interesting to watch this, down the road, whether the Foundry can use this not only to showcase what the Foundry system platform can do, but whether they can really get ongoing play from it will be interesting to watch.
We will keep an eye on that. So, Teos, what's your charisma?
Mine or my character's charisma? Or is that the same thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a recent study done by Frontiers in Psychology that looked specifically at D&D players in comparison to non-players. They compared 399 D&D players to 402, so roughly the same, non-players. And they looked at their levels of extroversion versus introversion. And overall, D&D players were more extroverted and open to new experiences. They also found a weak but statistically significant correlation between a D&D player's extroversion and the charisma score of their characters. So now, significance need not indicate correlation, of course.
Right.
But it's a fun study, and it sort of backs up this idea that role-playing games will help you learn to deal with others more effectively and be more comfortable dealing with others. Many of us are introverts, but any extroversion that we may have can be tied back to our experiences talking with others at role-playing games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as an extrovert, I'll say that I still think that my character's charisma scores vary quite widely, though I will say that, and I make characters for lots of different reasons and lots of different concepts, but in general, if I had to do a through line, I would say that I make characters that are a better version of me, right? The me I wish I was in some particular way. And so my charisma score is probably a little bit higher on my character sheet because I wish it were in real life. And so I'll do that. I will be a little bit better in some category, charisma or otherwise. But I'm trying to, somewhat reflect me, right? It's not weird that I play a lot of Rangers, for example, because of my links to the environment in all that I do career-wise and otherwise. So there's probably some, I wonder if maybe what this really is saying something along those lines where you're trying to make the better you. So your charisma scores may be like a little bit higher, but still may have a correlation. It's interesting. And I thank you to Timothy Gutierrez, who shared this on our Discord. And there was some really fun discussion that followed on there as well. Clearly, everybody on our Discord has really high charisma scores.
That's true. Since I use point buy, all of my characters have a higher charisma than me because I can't go lower than 8. And finally, to our creator corner, Jennell Jaquays has received the Solstice Award. This is an award from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. It was given to Jennell posthumously with the Kate Wilhelm Solstice Award for significant contributions to the science fiction, fantasy, and related genre field. Thank you to Keith Hammond for sharing this with us, and there's a link in the show notes to that particular award. And finally, in our creative corner, we have more information now on the Blade Runner Rebellion Kickstarter. Teos, give us the beats.
Yeah, so and it was good to hear, someone on our Discord said, thanks for breaking that down because they didn't understand what was being offered on this page. And so what this really is it's flipping the script from the world being an investigator, right? The Descartes in Blade Runner, I almost said Han Solo's character, Harrison Ford's character, where you're working for the LAPD, flip that around, and now instead you're a member of the replicant underground. So you may be a replicant or you may be a human, but you are fighting against the pillars of society, the ultra powerful corporations that are creating these creatures, the LAPD and the cops who are maintaining the order and are clearly beholden to the corporations. So you're fighting all of these entities and trying to slip away before they get you for being a rebel. So Replicant Rebellion has a hardback, and that book has new archetypes, new rules for cover, your covers, so you can have a cover identity, heat that you draw as your actions draw heat towards you, rules for creating operations, which are sort of like adventures, but focused on the type of Replicant Rebellion activity you're doing, and at least 3 operations to play. I know the number's already increased due to stretch goal stuff, but I don't remember how many we're at currently. So several operations are available. That's the book. Then you can get an asset pack, which is also offered. And this contains physical and digital handouts and tools to create your own case files and operations. And if you've seen the starter set or the second adventure that came out, those asset packs have been fantastic, like maps of LA and maps of specific buildings, versions of like in the movies where they look at a picture and then they like zoom in. So there'll be like a picture, and then when your players ask something smart, you can flip it over and show them the zoomed in part of like, yeah, here's what you get to see for having made that question. Really neat, right? Newspapers, all kinds of things like that. And so this is a superb. I love their asset packs. I'm absolutely getting both the book and the asset pack. And everybody in our Blade Runner RPG group that I've been running, they're like, yeah, let's go. Can't wait for it.
Awesome. And there is our news and commentary for the week.